You're playing as Supergirl.
This is Jason J. Lewis, the voice of Superman on Justice League Action.
This is Mark Wade, writer of Superman Birthright.
And you're listening to The Krypton Report.
And you're listening to Krypton Report.
Up in the sky, look!
It's a bird.
It's a plane! It's the Krypton Report!
The All Things Kryptonian podcast, including Superman and Supergirl.
We discuss games, movies, cartoons, TV shows, and comics.
Find us on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and Twitter.
Welcome to the Krypton Report special episode called Red Sun with Brian. On today's episode of Red Sun with Brian, which will be the only episode of Red Sun with Brian, we're going to discuss what? Red Sun. So welcome,
Brian.
So welcome, boys and girls, with Brian. James, how's it going over there?
Not too bad.
Are you with Brian?
So this is kind of cool.
Apparently not the way Tyler's with Brian.
So Brian's hanging out with me today. We tried to do some cool mic setup, but something's wrong, so we're sharing a mic. So that's always fun.
Sharing is caring.
Care Bear Stare. That's what rebuilt the multiverse from the Paragons. They just stared.
Yes, it is.
Oliver did all the work and focused.
For Oliver. You had to shout that too. Stare and shout that.
For Ollie! Okay, but seriously, let's bring it back down to Red Sun. So DC Universe just recently released their next animated feature, Red Sun, based off the book Red Sun.
With Brian.
And we decided that we're going to talk about this again because Brian was so excited to talk about this. And we thought it would be a fun time to bring him in and discuss it. So without further ado, let's get in.
Let's hear Brian.
Red Sun Red Sun the film 2020, directed by Sam Liu. All right. So the first thing I'm going to say is this animation is more in line with the Gotham by Gaslight animation, which are both Elseworlds tales. So it almost feels like they're doing a certain animation style for Elseworlds.
It's true.
And it definitely is more of the cheaper animation.
With Brian.
Yeah, animation with Brian.
Which is cheap. Whatever you can get.
So, it just because there is a lot more of the still images in the background that are just standing still while the other images in the front are moving. And it kind of just bums me out. Like, you know, the first one that I really felt like the animation got a little cheaper on was The Killing Joke, which was their first dip into an R-rated animated film. And that one I kind of understood why they would kind of take it a little bit cheaper. But no, it kind of...
Well, didn't they kind of mimic the art style of The Killing Joke, though?
A little.
A little differently, because obviously they can't mimic, like... they can't mimic the art style of Jim Lee for, like, Hush.
That's why I told you. I called it. Fellas, I told you. As soon as they were like, we're going to do Hush. And I was like, they're going to throw it in continuity because they won't be able to make Jim Lee art into animation. I called it.
No, you can't.
Huge mistake.
So, but this...
You can't make Jim Lee's art into animation. It's just...
They tried that with the 90s X-Men, and it's a hit and miss. You know, looking at it now, like... There's some cool stuff to it, but there's some stuff like in the way the animation cells move that just kind of feels clunky. But
well, you know, also done in the 90s, but
yeah.
But they've been doing animation since the 20s, so
I mean,
been doing animation for over 100 years.
Seriously, go back and watch the Superman Fleischer cartoons. They're beautiful.
Yeah.
I mean,
oh yeah, gorgeous.
But let's start off here and talk about Red Sun. The film opens up with a scene that I actually like because they create a different through line through this story. And I cannot properly pronounce the Russian addition to the name. I actually knew a Russian lady who had this same verbiage attached to the front of her name. I don't know, I'm going to attempt it.
Svetlana?
Yeah,
Lana.
it'll come out sound like I'm saying sweat, but it's not.
Svetlana.
So, Lana is kind of his through-line heart in this movie. And I like that because that's absent in the book. And so, I don't want to jump, I want to try to go in order, but there is the point where at the beginning we see young Clark running from bullies, and Lana actually defends him, and she points out to him, basically, I can't always defend you. And he says, I'm not afraid, of getting hurt. I'm afraid of hurting them. And
he flies her into the air.
Which is a great Clark Kent Lana story. And I like that addition.
Yeah, it really gives him the heart from the beginning, because that is one thing that, even though his methodology as time goes on becomes more skewed, that is what he believes in is right.
Now, I will say, for you two nerds, let's see if you guys know this. I don't know if it's in the book, and Brian's holding my book right now, but in the film, the newscaster at the beginning who is talking, his name is George Taylor. Do you know the significance of George Taylor?
Yeah. Gosh,
No, I don't think so.
Wait, wasn't that a guy that played Superman in the series or something?
George Taylor was the original editor of the Daily Star, which was the paper that Superman worked out until the radio show where it was adapted to be the Daily Planet and became Perry White, which then in turn went to the comics. And then later comics, George Taylor became a character that Clark worked for on Earth 2, especially in the new Superman, or the new 52 Batman Superman with Greg Peck and Jai Lee. He worked for the Daily Star, and George Taylor was the editor.
Oh, that's awesome.
You're a nerd.
Yeah, I am. Where's my phone?
All right.
Brian, take over.
All right, what we got here? Okay, so
after the credits, we open up to that news broadcast.
Yes.
Of the Superman propaganda. America calls it the Russian propaganda.
The Russian Superman, and then
Yep.
Now in the comic, don't they start this whole story with Superman crashing in 1938, right? Like him, 1938.
No, they don't. They don't start the comic. They start the comic with the news breaking of the Russian Superman, of the Soviet Superman. That's how the comic starts. It doesn't do there's no crashing or anything until the last page of the comic. Starts off with the news broadcast, and then it's Lex Luthor learning different languages and playing chess and all this other crap all at the same time. In the movie, we got the news broadcast, we've got Lex Luthor on the phone talking with the president, and then Superman at the dam with Stalin and the press and other people.
So as I'm flipping through the comic here, let's talk about Lois and Lex in the comic here. So personally, myself, I kind of like their relationship more in the comic, because in the comic their relationship is very cold. It's very like, we're just kind of married out of almost like maybe they were in love in the beginning, but Lex's obsession increases more and more as his Superman comes out. Whereas when you go to the film, like, he's not tearing down the Daily Planet. He's not belittling her. He's not, pushing her off to the side. He forgets their anniversary in the movie, but he still, like, has this total, like, love for Lois. Whereas in the comic, he's just kind of doing his own thing, and he's like, Lois, I'm going to be gone for a while. He becomes so much more obsessed with taking down Superman in the comic as I saw in the movie. What do you feel about that, James?
So there, honestly, in the comic, there's really only a couple of parts where they discuss the relationship with Lois and Lex, but she is with him the entire time. So even in the future, at the end of book 3, Lois is still with Lex. So even during everything that's happened, I don't feel that it's like a marriage of convenience or necessity. I do actually like the through line of their relationship in this movie, because they actually work as a pair. Lex has his ideas, like when he gives her the information on the gulags and stuff like that, the atrocities under Stalin's rule, and they share in the knowledge of what's going on. They do have some conflict together, like when he creates Superior Man and basically sacrifices him knowingly, just to test Superman. So I feel that in the movie, the movie has a lot of heart. There's a lot of heart coming from Superman, the emotions that he goes through, the actual relationship that Lex Luthor and Lois share over the years, even though he's busy and obsessed, they support each other, and it's something that's mutual. One thing that I did notice that is different is in the book there are clear differences, because they put page after page next to page where Lex is killing people who aren't cleared to know the project that they're working on. So Lex has an evil side, if not all evil, because in the end of the book, Lex is still the savior of the human race. And in the movie, they don't take him down a dark path to become, he's more cold. He's more of a cold, intelligent, scientist, businessman, but he's a savior trying to do mostly what's right by America and by his beliefs. It's not all just about ending Superman. There's more to it in the movie.
Do you think this Lex in this film was portrayed too much of a hero and a good guy?
Yeah.
Like they really, I think
that's what I was saying to James. I was like, I didn't like how in the movie that he had a better relationship with Lois. Like,
well, this is it's an Elseworlds tale. I mean, in the book, they do portray him, like I said, more evil, but in the end, he is the savior of the world and of the human race. So, like, in the end, he is a hero. He is the hero of the story because Superman sacrifices himself and steps aside and allows Lex Luthor and humanity to save him.
well, like as I read the book and I watch the movie, like
He
in the book you see this mirror image between Lex and Superman, where Superman, like Wonder Woman in the book, has this love for Superman, and you can see in the book where Lois has this admiration for Superman, that maybe Superman's making the better choices than her husband Lex is.
No, I wouldn't do that.
And there's like this conflict in her. And as Superman becomes so obsessed with the mission of saving humanity, and I'm the one that should be making these choices, then you see Lex focus on taking down Superman, and he doesn't focus on his marriage with Lois. He focuses on more of that mission of taking down Superman, and Superman focuses more on the mission of humanity and stuff. These are two men on two sides of the same coin, putting the mission before anything. And I feel like I feel like in the movie, having him have a better relationship with Lois, meaning Lex, you don't make Lex the other side of that coin. It's. Can someone help me with the words I'm trying to say here?
I got it. And that's the difference in this, is like how Lex is portrayed. Like, we don't get the obsessed with chess Lex who, freaks out because the clone of Superman beat him at chess. We have much more of a emotionally distant Lex, but like a good guy Lex.
Yeah. You don't get a Lex that's creating the Phantom Zone or finding the Phantom Zone just to hide so he can keep his plans going.
And I just found that interesting. I mean, they definitely did make him the hero. And this is another example, even in the film they highlight that Superman's so removed from everybody, he has no human grounding connection at all. Like, and that's part of why the Clark Kent persona is important, Bendis. Because he's just,
listen to us, Bendis.
He's just the premier, dictator the entire time. And, I think they do a great addition with the scene of him and was it Korean leader? Or Chinese leader?
They're at that like dinner table.
And he even says, like, how long have you known me?
I think he's a Korean leader.
He says, how long have you known me? And he says, like, years and years. He's like, but you scare me still.
You terrify me. Yeah.
And, I mean, that just shows, like, he's ruling out of fear. And, I mean, like we talked about this when we talked about the book, it's just, this is that story. But they've done so many versions of that Superman since then in other forms of continuity that it just gets old. But this one makes sense. And I want to back up for a moment. Did we point out that there was no Pete Ross character?
I hated that. Absolutely hated it.
What did you think about, like I said, I'm just catching up. My father-in-law stopped by. He wanted to talk to Geneva, but she's not here. That he killed Stalin himself.
I hated it.
I don't know. Like, it's one of those things, that's on my list of I'm not sure yet, but I like that he did it, but he was crying. I mean...
It's like they're trying to take the Zod kill from Man of Steel and put it in here.
Well, I mean, looking at this as a different Superman, because, like I told you, it's like, the reason why I like book 1 of Red Son, because I feel like it's still Superman.
I agree.
It's still Superman who just happens to be Russian. And can we all agree that both the film and the book have too much stuff that moves too fast?
Absolutely.
they could both benefit from being longer, especially the book. I think the book, another 2 issues, make it a 6 or a 5 issue.
I'm going to go with 6.
Or another, 3, and spread it out a little bit more because it does jump, and there's a lot that we just kind of take for granted in those jumps.
Like the whole
that's something we. So Batman, that's one thing in the movie that I liked and I didn't. Because in the book, I really liked how Pietro killed his parents, and he, in the end, he got his revenge on him by selling him out to Superman. I really like that part in the book, but in the movie, showing him as a child inside the gulag, and then that's where he and his parents dying in there, and then him drawing Superman back, it was really powerful just because when he's a child, he says they say you can hear a leaf falling from 1,000 miles away, but you couldn't hear our cries.
Yes.
But then when he has Diana in the same place, he hears her and he shows up in less than 10 seconds. So it's very powerful. He had a strong personal motive against Superman in the movie, whereas in the book he has a personal problem, not specifically with Superman, but more with him being a dictator and being in control of the government and the country the way it is, and not being free, is how it was in the book. So that was his motivation in that. In this, it's partly that, but he also has that personal connection against Superman, and they do incorporate the bomb inside of his body, and he won't let him take him alive. So I think I do miss the Peter thing, the Peter motive in that arc of the story, but I honestly feel that the way they did it in the movie is more personal against Superman and a little less of a political rebellion. Even though that is part of it. Part of it.
He's reminds me more of like the V for Vendetta character from the book. Not so much the film, but the book. So before we get to Batman, because I really want to, I like the Red Sun hell, for lack of a better term, that he kind of makes prison, because when he opened the doors to the floor, it looked almost like he was sending Superman to a hell.
Okay. You mean when you threw him in the thing?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The pit he made for him. I was like, wow. And this Batman definitely was evil in the sense of he said you have 10 minutes to evacuate the museum, and then he just blows it up. And he has the line did I say 10 minutes? I meant 10 seconds.
Yeah, I don't remember him blowing those people up in the comic.
And I'm okay with it because I like the idea.
He set off bombs.
If we're going to do
I'm pretty
this
positive he set off bombs.
5 bombs, yeah.
I like the idea. If we're going to do this Elseworld where we have this, in a sense, corrupt Superman, I like that we have you at a corrupt Batman, too. Because it almost shows their tether to each other. Instead of having Batman be this, light, and Superman be the darkness or whatever that they're trying to tell. Do we touch on the fact that in this story, and with that same idea about darker versions, I really don't like Wonder Woman in this story.
In the movie or the book?
In the movie.
Hated Wonder Woman in the movie.
And I'll tell you why.
I felt she was kind of
if Wonder Woman's supposed to
disrespected.
But my thing is, in the movie, if Wonder Woman was the idea of Wonder Woman, this is, okay, once again, an Elseworld story. Okay, so we are stepping away from the characters that we know because she's a character that that can really become annoying when she starts basically saying man's world, all men hate men.
Yeah.
Then you're just like, okay, well now you're just like, I don't like you because you're a sexist character that hates all men because
Men cause all problems. That's all I got out of this movie from her.
Yeah, and I mean, and that's like a fine line for the character to walk, and that's really all she was. And in this film they shortened her story so much that I didn't even feel like when she's with him, and then all of a sudden she shows up in her costume, and then she's against him. I mean, it's just like beat.
It was weird for me because like in the book, she's discovering the world of man, and she's trying to see if there's any good men in the world, and then she meets Superman, and he wants to create this utopia, and he wants to save people, and she develops this love and this admiration for him and this respect for him. So when she is in the lasso of truth, and she's like, oh man, he's gonna die, and he's the one that can save our people, or just everybody, and she breaks that chain and goes to save him, it has, to me, more emotional weight. But when you're watching this movie, you're like, oh, okay, so she's just going to, so she did that to save him, but men are still the most evil thing in the world. Like, I don't know, it just kind of lost me, James.
When she breaks the lasso,
yeah,
she hasn't given up on him yet. Their last interaction, she tells him that she hasn't given up on him yet, but she has concerns about the way that he is governing his states, his countries, and so at the moment when she breaks her lasso, it's to save him, and she hasn't given up on him. But as soon as he comes out, and it's either death to Batman or brain surgery, and he becomes a lobotomized slave, that's when she's like, all right, well, like I can no longer stand by your side. I can't believe in what in the way that you are continuing to go. She voiced concerns about that prior, and then basically when she experiences it firsthand right in front of her, that's when she gives up. I do agree with the jaded way that she is man's world. Men are responsible. But you kind of got to look at it the way she sees it. Is Stalin is responsible for the way that the USSR was. Superman is responsible for the way it is now. Batman was responsible for his terrorist actions. Lex Luthor and President Eisenhower and President Kennedy, they're all men, and they're all responsible for fighting against each other and continuing this war back and forth. So it is what she sees, but I do understand, and I did feel like, wow, like men are all bad. I definitely saw that, and I definitely feel it, but that is also what she sees, being in her political position as an ambassador.
Well, think about this for our first setup. Let's jump back real quick. In the book is narrated by Superman, so there's a lot of talking. He talks about how Diana was in love with him, but he couldn't see it. That whole story is gone.
Yep.
They make her a straight-on lesbian in this.
Straight up.
So right there's your first thing.
I lived on an island with a woman. What do you expect?
Okay. So there's your first knowledge of, even then with that, she has no use for men.
Yep.
She friends Superman, and I think there could be a stronger story of their friendship.
Yeah.
But it's not there.
Right.
So, but one thing I do like is in the book, it really makes it feel like Superman calls out to Diana to stop it, and she breaks the rope because he calls her to it, and because of her feelings for him.
Because he knows he played on her emotions.
But in this, they took that out, and I like that. I liked that wasn't there because I felt like it just made him seem more like a D-bag by, kind of manipulating her emotions and stuff, knowing that she would do.
Yeah, in the movie, she was still backing him as a friend. But it literally turned on its head when earlier that very same day or whatever, they had the discussion, and then, he comes and it's death or enslavement.
Well, okay.
or zombified.
So, what happened? They never really made it totally clear in the book or the movie, what really happened when she broke that lasso.
Right.
What did she lose?
So
she just gets gray hair and that's it?
And that's in the book, I felt like she was even weaker. In this, I felt like because later when she shows back up, her hair's more white, and she looks like her physical body is back to being as powerful as it was.
Right.
Because even Janine was like, what just happened? And I'm like, I don't 100% don't know, because it's like an older Wonder Woman type story. Mm-hmm. And even in the movie, they didn't do it either, is we don't know how Batman tricked her or subdued her or anything. It just happens.
Yeah. In the movie, she looks weak as crap. And then she lifts that generator and breaks it in half. And you're like, oh, okay.
The only thing that they said, because I don't recall them saying too much about anything in the book at the time, is that her lasso is magically a part of her. Her soul is attached to the lasso. So when she breaks it, it breaks a part of her. And I don't know. That's where the physical change and the weakness comes from. But yeah, I also thought she could barely walk, but then she rips this generator in half.
Right. I mean, she looks so weak in that movie. So you would take it as this is the symbolic showing of her bond with Superman going to crap. That's it now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, we also with her we have her mother's always referenced more off screen. We don't really have her mother ever as a character. And I do want to point out this. One of my favorite shots from the book is not in the movie. Of Superman stopping the train. Yeah, I just want to throw that out there. Do we reference...
That's a beautiful image from the very beginning.
Did we reference the addition of Superman destroying the Berlin Wall as they were building it?
No, we did not mention that.
And that Jack Ryder was the newscaster there.
It was nice having Mr. Creeper himself there.
Was it Jack Ryder? I didn't catch that.
Yes.
I only got to watch this once.
Same. Now, okay, so I know you guys were talking about the Bizarro. I just want to say this real quick. I did not like the Bizarro story in this because he didn't really get the hero's death that he got in the book when he realized what was going to happen and he chooses to save everybody and to go out like a hero.
I like that little voiceover.
I did miss that.
Because that voiceover mirrors John Byrne's Bizarro in the Man of Steel volumes. Because in the Man of Steel volumes, when John Byrne writes Bizarro at first, he talks about Bizarro saving that blind lady and how she couldn't see his ugliness, and he went and sacrificed himself in the John Byrne story. And then in the book, Superman does that voiceover and says, I don't know what he was thinking.
Yeah.
And if he was trying to save humanity or he was just acting on impulse or whatever. I don't know. I like that better. But in the movie, you don't get that.
And did anyone else...
So it was...
With Superior Man, was anybody else almost expecting him to be like, America? Yeah!
Yes! I was
Team America!
I was waiting for him to go on stage and it'd be like... When it comes crashing down and it hurts inside.
I was like, he was like, America! I was like,
come out to Real American.
I am a real American.
So I missed that about the Bizarro story. But one thing I do like about it is at this point, Lex had created him. This is kind of the coldest you see Lex in the movie. Is during this scene of sacrificing him. In the book, you get to see his incomplete and his messed up powers become a danger to people around, people in the submarines, and then the people on the streets in London.
Yeah.
In this one, he comes in and he comes in like a bad guy, but it's like he was sent in by Lex Luthor. He was released. He was sent in by Lex Luthor to fight, and he comes in preaching truth, justice, and the American way. But then so as opposed to his abilities kind of being uncontrollable and being a danger, he purposefully puts in danger and more than likely some civilians on the streets that we see when after the bus is destroyed and Superman's put through some buildings and stuff. He purposefully killed civilians and created collateral damage in the streets of Moscow. So
yeah,
I don't know, kind of a trade-off there, but this is the point where it kind of seems like Lex has that evil inside of him, and it really makes the U.S., because it's kind of like from the point of view of Superman and the way that Superior Man comes in and the way he's talking, it kind of makes the U.S. and Lex Luthor seem like the bad guys at this point. But I did like their fight. The super fight between them was actually really cool. Going through buildings and stuff. I mean, very Man of Steel. I mean, the way that these beings are so powerful and they can level mountains with their power. Like, buildings are nothing when it comes to these beings that can level mountains with just a physical impact. So, destroying vehicles in the road and the buildings, and then fighting in the mountains when Superman. See, now this one makes sense because Superior Man is coming after Superman specifically. And so when Superman leaves, Superior Man gives chase, and Superman takes him to a secluded area in the mountains to have this huge knockdown battle that levels chunks of mountains and stuff. Like in Man of Steel, Zod is not after Superman. Zod wants to punish Superman, and he knows the best way to punish Superman is to kill and destroy civilians and the cities and things like that. He's not gonna Superman. If Superman left, he just leaves Zod to his ultimate destruction of Metropolis. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So that's like a invalid argument. He's not going to be like, oh, let's get away from people. Zod's not going to get away from people because he wants to kill people. That's the point. So, the fact that they're, just showing a kind of a difference here, of Superior Man is going after Superman solely to take him out. So he's able to draw him away and then have this huge battle. When Zod, he wants to kill people, he's not going to be drawn away, and the big knockdown drag out battle that's going to destroy so many buildings and things like that. It's inevitable.
So let's kind of move forward a little bit here. The next big thing I think that's changed that I actually like for the better is the way they did the Green Lantern Corps. Because it's a little weird in the book about, how Jordan being his mind prison and his will to overcome, and they kind of teeter on he was a POW and like
That was so messed up.
what he did when he talked about he captured all of them, like it was vague, like he basically just murdered them. So
okay, yeah. So in the book, while he's in the POW camp, he creates this in his mind, this concentration camp for his prisoners, and then when he gets out, he builds it physically, just how he had in his mind, and then he captures them all and puts them in the camp.
that's kind of what I felt like.
And then we're like, okay, well, let's just give this guy a ring. He'll be okay.
Yeah. So I do like the way that the Green Lantern Corps was done. They show up. I like that we get Jon Stewart, Hal Jordan, and Guy Gardner.
Yeah, I like that too.
I was a little disappointed they didn't say Raynard.
And they had Phil Lamar do the voice for Jon Stewart.
Yes, they did.
Yep, that was Phil Lamar from the Justice League animated series. To Jon Stewart again.
So I like that, but I am disappointed because my favorite line that Superman says, allow me to read from the book.
From the book of Red Sun.
From the book of Rao.
It is written.
Let me. Where's the line? Hold on. A thought-based weapon. I get someone that moves at 10 times the speed of thought. Not too smart, Colonel Jordan. I thought that was an awesome line. That was not used in the movie. But we did get a kind of a cool scene of Wonder Woman showing up, and
in an awesome costume.
Yeah, in a much different.
Yeah, that was great. That was a nice costume.
She shows up as an ambassador, just begging for peace, and it was cool. Because they didn't have anyone else from Themyscira. Wonder Woman shows up just to stop the sides and basically says that once again she'll return to Paradise Island, and they'll never see from her again. And that's she's shutting herself off from man's world. We didn't get the whole craziness of all the Superman villains attacking the White House.
Disappointment.
That was okay. I like that they try to keep it small with just the interactions.
Well, the only thing I'll say is in the book, two things. In the book, I kind of liked how Superman was just flying really fast and just ripping lanterns in half.
Yes.
Because that was awesome. But a thing that upset me about the book, and I'm glad they took it out of the movie, is that in the book you have Doomsday as part of that group that's going to take down Superman. It's friggin' Doomsday.
Yeah. I always hate when they try to... Doomsday to me is a great character they try to always find ways to bring back, but he's really a one and done.
Right. He killed Superman. But in there, he's just... he's like a Bane,
The other thing I want to point out that I thought was interesting, and it's subtle.
I'd say he hasn't been quite the same since Hunter Prey.
No.
And then there was that story where Brainiac was in control of Doomsday's body. But since then, since those first three stories, the death of Superman and Hunter Prey, and then when Brainiac is control of Doomsday's body. Since those three stories, he hasn't been quite the same. They did something really cool with him in Superman Doomed.
Yep.
In the New 52.
Took the words
I really enjoyed that. Because, it kind of gave Doomsday a different form of immortality, that even when he was physically destroyed, like Superman destroyed him, his spores would still live on, would still perpetuate Doomsday.
Which is awesome. But I was gonna say, if you notice,
Sorry.
in the book is different, but in the film, Superman doesn't age. Every character ages. And in the book, Superman does age because they start graying him out as the book goes along. But in the film, he doesn't age, and every other character shows signs of aging and change. Mm-hmm. But he doesn't, and I like that little touch, just because it made him a little bit more prominent.
Well, that is something though that's kind of interesting in the book where it seems like Superman ages, and then they talk about how Luthor lived for another how many years, 1,000 years or something.
Yeah, but no spoilers.
And Superman's still alive, and he hasn't changed since before he supposedly died.
I wonder if they took out the aging in the movie because they were taking out the epilogue.
And that's what I put in my notes, is there is no epilogue, and I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
Because we had a whole discussion how...
It was a weird epilogue.
It's a weird epilogue, and it works for an Elseworld, but it's cool at the same... There's either your story's about this epilogue, or it's not. Because either you pull that crazy twist, which almost seems like it was just something that they threw in there, and it's either like, oh my god, that's awesome, or this negates the entire story and what the story was.
Let's go to the Brainiac White House thing.
Well, I'm just saying, we're not going to talk about the epilogue because we did the book.
I think we got to talk about the epilogue.
But it's not in the movie.
This is Red Sun with Brian.
So Brainiac, yes, shows up with Superman, and they do kind of change the whole... I like this better than the letter.
No, I like the letter.
Just because
I have to be the problem guy, problem child.
So one quick thing before we do that, before we talk about the Brainiac and stuff, I do like in the movie where Diana shows up. So she kind of shows up. She's in that awesome outfit, but she is there to just be a bridge for peace. That's the only reason she's there. She doesn't fight Superman like she does in the book.
Oh, yeah.
Superman actually throws a punch at her. She catches his fist and blows him off and says, well, you know what? Screw you. Man's world is no longer welcome to Paradise Island's ideals and love and peace. And she leaves. I thought that was good. I thought that was better than the way that they handled it in the story, where she has that resentment and she actually joins in the fight against Superman. She doesn't pick a side in the movie when she shows up.
Oh, I totally agree.
So, now Brainiac at the White House.
So, Brainiac,
and the letter.
So in the book, Luthor surprises Batman before he surprises Superman before Superman even thinks about making the decision to invade. Brainiac's okay, if you times of the essence, you got to do this within 2 hours, or Luthor's going to get you. And Luthor shows up behind him and is like, "Hey, I'm already here. What's happening?"
So they took out, the whole part about Luthor getting pulled into Brainiac and kind of trying to fail safe, and him making the critical error, the decimal point that sets off the self-destruct. I do like that it's kind of Brainiac. I like that they take out the letter and he has the actual seal, because it's more representation of what he's actually done. Because then it flips it back that Brainiac says, "I've always had the technology to fix it." And you see that Superman either never wanted it to happen, because they point out the bottle represents everything that he has achieved and wanted, and then also has a little bit more of an impact when Brainiac destroys it, and you find out Brainiac was never reprogrammed; he was just using Superman. And it's a little bit,
to collect the entire planet.
It's a little bit stronger than Luthor, just basically beating him with words, which in the book is okay, but it also gives a really cool scene of Superman and Luthor fighting side by side.
Yeah, they did. Lex got a Lexo armor. He developed a suit, a battle armor suit, for the movie, and he was still instrumental in taking down Brainiac by having those discs that he had that kind of weakened a section of the force field that allowed Superman to enter.
It was dope.
So, yeah, he was instrumental in the takedown of Brainiac. So it wasn't the same way as it was in the book, but he still couldn't have done it without Lex Luthor. And same in the books. He couldn't have done it without Lex Luthor because Lex Luthor took Brainiac down from the inside.
So I liked it, and of course Superman flies off. It blows up, and we get Luthor's speech at the end, and we get the kind of Lois sees Clark Kent, in the crowd. He walks off, and that's where the movie ends. And I think I like it because to me that's the end of the story, and the epilogue in the book is cool, but it changes the whole story.
And it's what's nice about the movie, and Superman in the end doing what he said, leaving Earth and humanity to its own devices to save itself. Luthor in this story not being just the horrible villain, him saving and recovering the United States and reaching out, discussing and reaching out and giving it to the people to reach out and save Russia, save the Soviet Union and the Warsaw states from their riots and their implosions at Superman's absence, because that's a huge power vacuum when he leaves. But they also turn it around there in the end, because as the movie goes, kind of seeing things from Superman's point of view, there's a lot of bad that that the U.S. is doing, and they're very aggressive when it comes to different presidents and Lex Luthor, and also the scenes where Superman's talking with Diana and they're talking about the division in the United States of people poor and starving to death and things like that. So they show America as kind of as kind of on the wrong side, as it were, and then in the end, America kind of steps up and has recovered and is this power and is this helping hand.
And then, we have Lex step aside and James Olsen takes over as president.
Yep. I had no problem. I loved that they got Phil Morris to be James Olsen in this movie. Phil Morris is excellent in everything DC.
Yes. I'm still waiting for him to show up on Supergirl.
As when they cast him as James Olsen, I was like, oh wow, I was like, that's going to be interesting if he's this redheaded freckled dude with glasses. But no, they made James Olsen a black guy. So I was like, hey, that's cool. Yeah. Hey, they already did it on Supergirl. Why not?
All right, Brian. So since this is Red Sun with Brian, talk about the epilogue and go.
You see, in the epilogue, you find out as time goes by
that Lex Luthor has children, and the children have children, and as generations and years and billions of years go by.
You mean, is that how humans perpetuate life?
Yes.
No. I just thought the stork came and dropped my fat ass on the doorstep.
That's maybe where you came from. Got stuck out in the tree like the Grinch.
Absolutely. I was supposed to go to a rich family like the Waynes or something. Anyway,
all right, go ahead.
billions of years ago, and people procreate. It's crazy. And the Luthor last name ends up getting shorter, where it's just straight up L. And eventually, a Luthor is born called Jor-El. He's a scientist. He's smarter than his great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-grandfather.
Like I said, I like that, but not in this story. Because that's not what this story is.
You sure?
Yeah, because if that's where you're going, go back and then reread this and look at all the parallels that they are related. Like, it negates everything about this story. Like, it all of a sudden it takes you out of this story, and you have a whole new story that you want. Like,
I do want that story.
That's what I'm saying. I want that story.
Because in the future, the Earth or the Sun becomes red because of radiation, which then negates abilities. Well, it starts putting abilities in the DNA. And so Jor-El takes his son as the Earth is about to explode because of the red sun radiation and takes him back in the past.
Which makes it a time travel story, which is one of the ideas that Jerry Siegel originally had for Superman. And then it makes the whole story just reciprocal. So he goes back to the past, it's going to happen all over again. So it makes it a self-contained story because it's a loop.
It's a loop. But it means that Luthor and Superman are inevitable
in this story, because it makes it even more self-contained Elseworld. Like, it doesn't have the ability to branch out. Like, that's the story I would prefer in like continuity. Like that's why this epilogue. Because I told James, like we talked, I was like, wouldn't it have been more interesting instead of having this book end with the ship crashing in Russia, that when he sent him back, it crashed in the USA.
When I was reading that for the first time, I thought it was
it crashed in Kansas,
in the USA.
And then because there's a line earlier in the book where Luthor says, if he had been American, we could have been best friends.
And 12-hour difference. 12-hour difference. The Earth would have been in a different rotation. He would have landed in America.
So I thought, like,
yeah, they did have that line too.
You know, if they had put that in the epilogue where he lands in America at the end, it just kind of like, oh, so Red Sun's like an origin story to the actual rest of Superman. And then it would have been like kind of continuity, but it's not. It's a closed loop. So.
Well, the interesting thing was, like, when did Earth become Krypton? You know, like
yeah, when did the name change and all? Like, it poses more questions, and when you get done reading the story, that's what you're thinking. That's where your brain is. You're not focusing on the story that you just told about the Soviet and what a Soviet Superman was, and that change, that ideals, and how he corrupted him. Like, I would have preferred more of Red Sun Superman based off the first book, where we got to meet Soviet mom and pop. We got to see him as, like, the worker of Soviet, and not just rise from all of a sudden being dictator, because then it changes the idea that he's a Soviet to now he's just a dictator.
So, you know, before we even go any farther, we went to the epilogue in the movie when Superman flies Brainiac's ship off because the ship contains black holes that will annihilate the planet.
Yes.
And he's flying the ship out into space. He remembers the line from Svetlana after he rescued her from the gulag, which is seriously messed up. We kind of went by that except for the Batman portion.
But that's what
she's imprisoned. She's imprisoned in this place to die just because she knew him before he was Superman.
Right, and that's what
that was her crime. Is knowing him before he was Superman.
And that's why I said her role in this was much better with the opening scene, her middle scene of her death with him holding her in his hands and her dying. And because of what you just said, like, that was his tether in a sense, and now he's broken his tether to people, and that makes him killing Stalin a little bit more powerful and acceptable in the story. And that's why I said she's the heart through line, because the last thoughts, quote unquote, he has as he's going off to sacrifice himself is those words from her about being protector.
Yeah, her words of using his powers to save the world. And he did. He used his powers to save the world. he tried to help, and he tried to do the right thing for a long time. And there were certain things he believed, but he also was brought up to believe the things that the laws of communism and Stalinism at the time. So he had an askewed view of what was right, but he did what he believed to be right, and then when he realized he was wrong, and he sacrificed himself and to save the world, because the world was going to be destroyed. He got that heart back, and he remembered. So he had that through line of her from the time they were children to the end.
So let's go ahead and wrap up here real quick. Speed round. James, out of 10, what do you rate this? Go, James.
Out of 10, I give it a 7.5.
Brian.
6.8.
I'm gonna fall.
Because I think the story's overrated.
No, I mean, I think it's one of those, like, I enjoy it, but it's not my favorite Superman story. It's such an Elseworlds, and I think it is a little overrated.
If it was 6 issues, I think it could have been, like, a great story.
I would give it a 6.5, 7.
So
I'm trying to fall in there.
So I like the movie because it has an end. You know, we kind of get a beginning, then we have an end. Whereas with the epilogue in the book, it kind of gives you that time loop, and then you're thinking about it like this is all inevitable. Like, he is the good guy, he is the bad guy, he is, you know, like.
And it gives you a story that you really want to read.
Like it's inevitable. Like he can't save the world the way that he wants to, or the way that Superman can. You know what I mean?
Yes.
But all right. Well, that has been Red Sun with Brian
and James and Tyler.
Part of the Red Sun discussion.